Most people work their entire lives believing they're doing everything right. They study hard, they get a job, they work more hours, they wait for promotions, and yet at the end of the month, there's never enough left. Bills keep coming, stress keeps growing, and the idea of real financial freedom feels further away every year. What if the problem isn't how hard you work, but how you were taught to think about money? Most people are taught to chase security, to depend on a paycheck, to trade time for money over and over again. But the wealthy play a completely different game. They don't work for money, they make money work for them. And the difference isn't intelligence, luck, or talent, it's education, financial education. In this video, you'll begin to understand why the middle class stays stuck, why hard work alone isn't enough, and why changing the way you think about money changes everything. This lesson comes from Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Most people were never taught how money actually works. They were taught how to earn it, how to save it, how to avoid debt. But almost no one was taught how to use money as a tool. That's the core idea behind Rich Dad, Poor Dad. This book doesn't talk about getting rich overnight. It talks about changing the way you see money, work, and security. Robert Kiyosaki explains why two people can earn the same salary, work the same number of hours, and still end up in completely different financial realities. One stays trapped in bills and obligations. The other slowly builds freedom. The difference is not income, it's not education, it's not talent, it's mindset. In this video, we'll break down the first core lesson from Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and why following the traditional path almost always keeps people stuck. Once you understand this, you'll start seeing money and your own choices very differently. Very few people ever stop to question the rules they were taught about money. From an early age, the message is simple: study hard, get a good job, and work for security. But Rich Dad, Poor Dad challenges this idea at its core. Robert Kiyosaki explains that most people grow up learning to work for money instead of learning how money can work for them. When your income depends entirely on your job, you're trapped in a cycle where time becomes your most valuable and limited resource. Every raise feels like progress, but so do new bills, new obligations, and higher taxes. The problem isn't effort, the problem is direction. In the book, Kiyosaki introduces the idea that financial freedom doesn't come from earning more, it comes from building assets that generate income without your constant presence. This is where most people get stuck. They focus on salary, not ownership, on stability, not growth, on safety, not opportunity. And without realizing it, they spend decades running faster on the same financial treadmill. This chapter sets the foundation for everything that comes next, because before you can change your results, you have to change how you think about money. Instead of asking how much they earn, wealthy people ask a different question. They ask how long their money can survive without them working. In Rich Dad, Poor Dad, this shift is crucial. Most people rely entirely on a paycheck. If the job stops, the income stops. And that dependence creates fear. Fear of losing work, fear of taking risks, fear of change. That fear silently controls decisions. It keeps people stuck in jobs they dislike. It pushes them to accept bad financial deals. And it convinces them that stability is safer than growth. Kiyosaki explains that the rich focus on building sources of income that don't require constant effort, assets that generate money whether they show up or not. This doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't require extreme risk. It starts with small decisions, choosing ownership over consumption, learning before spending, and understanding that comfort today often costs freedom tomorrow. The moment income is no longer tied only to time, options begin to appear. And that's when money stops being a source of stress and starts becoming a tool. At some point, most people fall into the same financial trap. They start earning a little more and immediately upgrade their lifestyle. A better car, a bigger house, more subscriptions, more comfort. On the surface, it looks like progress. But in Rich Dad, Poor Dad, this behavior is described as one of the biggest reasons people stay broke. As income increases, expenses quietly rise along with it. And instead of building assets, people build obligations. The problem isn't enjoying life. The problem is confusing consumption with growth. Kiyosaki explains that many people work harder not to become free, but to support a lifestyle that keeps them dependent on their job. They feel successful, but they're more fragile than ever. One unexpected expense, one lost paycheck, and everything collapses. This is why the rich delay gratification, not because they don't want comfort, but because they understand that freedom comes first. When money is used to buy liabilities instead of assets, it becomes a leash instead of a tool. And most people don't realize they're trapped until it's too late to change easily. The moment you start seeing money differently, your choices begin to change. Not overnight, not dramatically, but quietly and consistently. In Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Kiyosaki explains that financial growth doesn't start with big moves. It starts with awareness. You begin to question where your money is going. You pause before upgrading your lifestyle. You think twice before taking on new obligations. Instead of asking, "Can I afford this?" you start asking, "Will this make me freer or more dependent?" This shift alone creates distance from the financial habits most people follow automatically. Building wealth isn't about denying yourself enjoyment. It's about understanding priorities. Freedom first, comfort later. The wealthy focus on learning, not impressing. They invest time before investing money, and they accept that progress looks boring in the beginning. Small steps, repeated consistently, change everything over time. This is where the gap forms, not between rich and poor, but between those who stay stuck and those who quietly move ahead. Most people never stop to question the path they are on. They work, they earn, they spend, and they repeat the cycle year after year, believing that effort alone will eventually lead to freedom. Rich Dad, Poor Dad challenges this belief. It shows that working harder inside the same system rarely changes the outcome. What changes the outcome is understanding how money flows and choosing to stand on the right side of that flow. Financial freedom doesn't come from luck, it doesn't come from sudden success, and it doesn't come from waiting for permission. It comes from learning how to see opportunities where others see only security, from choosing ownership over comfort, and from accepting that short-term sacrifice creates long-term freedom. This is not an easy shift, and it's not a popular one. Most people prefer certainty, even if it keeps them stuck. But those who build wealth quietly understand that patience, discipline, and education matter more than appearances. If this perspective made you rethink how money actually works, this channel was created exactly for that purpose. Here, we break down powerful ideas from books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, not to promise shortcuts, but to help you build clarity, consistency, and long-term thinking. If you want to continue this journey, subscribe to the channel. New videos are released regularly, each one exploring another lesson about money, mindset, and freedom. This series is just beginning, and the next lessons go even deeper.